Welcome to Ascended Warrior, Soul Codes for a Shifting World. This is your sacred space to awaken, align, and rise in your purpose. So let's begin. Hi, welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Ascended Warrior Season 2. Today we're going to dive into a topic that I have been talking about for years when trying to reframe and understand the leaders that the world has been seeing over the last decade or so. And that is catalyst souls. Catalyst souls are souls that come to the planet not just for their 3D purposes, but to trigger a consciousness event through their actions. And we have seen these souls pop up repeatedly throughout history. And it helps to understand why some of the biggest atrocities in the world have happened. Now, this is not justifying the atrocities. This is not glorifying harm. This is talking about the spiritual, the divine intent that allowed those things to happen. We often talk about spirituality, and certainly people talk about God as in someone that can come to earth and stop bad things from happening. Why, if there was a God, would they allow something to happen? This conversation goes down that line. There is a reason that these things happened. And the good that came from them for soul journeys is something that we can explore, that we can talk about, especially in hindsight. We're able to go back in history and look at those events and see what was triggered as far as global consciousness because of those atrocities. So they're not just dark. There is light that comes from the darkness. We are going to talk about a lot of the leaders that are in place now, as well as the leaders that have been in place during some of the world's largest crimes against humanity. And I want to be very clear, this is not about who these men or women are. This is about how our souls respond to them, about the actions that they take, and then how our souls respond to those actions. This is a higher lens of looking at human actions, human activities, human nature. So it's going to be a rife discussion, potentially, and people are very emotional about these topics. So I want to start, as always, by centering the heart, by setting a safe space. Again, this is not to glorify harm. This is not to justify any actions. This is exploring the spiritual meanings, the spiritual mechanisms that often come from the darkest times in humanity. So let's start by settling into your space. Just take a deep breath in and out. Allow your heart to open. Feel a ribbon of light going from your heart all the way down through your body, into the ground, and down into the heart of Gaia. Feel your heart connecting to her heart, opening you to unconditional love, acceptance, and grounding in this moment, in this time. Allowing us to feel with our hearts, to understand with our hearts, and to feel safe in the space of love and light. Catalyst souls is something that I coined, for lack of a better term, when talking to my father during the original Trump election cycle in 2016. He was very confused by what was happening. My father, not Trump. He was very confused by the energy that was happening and why some people were it was like Trump had divided the waters. You think of kind of Moses walking through the water and dividing the ocean. He had divided the populace. People loved him or hated him, and the conversations were logical. There was no logic involved in the conversation. It was emotional. People had emotional connection to what was happening, to what was being said, to his platform, to the things around him, to him as a human. He created this vortex of emotional energy, and there was no middle ground on that. And my father would come to me, and I'm a spiritual teacher, so I've been doing this for a while, and I like to look at human events through a spiritual lens. I like to understand why they're happening, to understand how our souls can learn, how we're using it to evolve, but also to keep me sane. When I look at things that scare people, things that scare me, and I find the higher purpose behind it, it takes away that fear. I don't have to live in that fear anymore. So with Trump, that was something that I was looking at very early. Why is his soul coming around now? And why is the world, why is the energy around him being reacted to the way that it was? And I went into meditation on it, and I sat in meditation, I sat in channel, I did some card readings on it, and I heard very clearly that he was a catalyst soul, a soul that incarnates to provoke change, to provoke great change. And often these catalyst souls, and when I was meditating, I saw other catalyst souls pop into my consciousness, and we will talk about them. Often these souls that incarnated down to provoke global community, global village, whatever it is, change, did it through fear and division. These souls got the people in their sphere to go so far into the shadow that they had to wake up. They went so far into the fear and darkness that it was a shock to their system. So they weren't able to pretend that it wasn't happening. And often these souls get these catalysts, they get the souls around them to live in fear, to dehumanize the other people in their world, to see themselves as isolated, to shut their eyes to cruelty, because if it's not affecting them, it's not important. And these souls come in at the times where that's already the trend that humanity is going in. You think about that slippery slide metaphor. Humans have a propensity to be very cruel to each other, and we have done things that are, quite frankly, shocking. And when you read about them, you can't fathom that they could happen until you look at the nuances that were behind that, the motivators that were behind those actions. It's fear, it's divisiveness, dehumanizing each other, and making them feel isolated. Those things, when they happen, trigger war. They trigger extremism. They trigger slavery. When we can see each other as less than, when I believe that another group is not human, when I can vilify an entire ethnicity, then what can I do to them? And these catalyst souls come into they incarnate during times where this is already the trend that humans are going on. And it's happened repeatedly throughout our history. They'll come in and they make it worse. They don't always have to make it worse. There are absolutely catalyst souls who have come down and shown through light that we needed to change. There absolutely are those souls that have come down and said, this is so freaking bad. This is what light feels like. Let's try this instead. But the catalyst souls that I'm talking about that have made arguably the greatest changes in history came down to provoke change through shadow. They come down and they're often in positions of power. They take over. They have a message that very much appeals to those who are living in fear. those who feel isolated, those who feel victimized and are looking for somebody to blame. These groups come in and their message is often about dehumanization. This group did this. If you want to blame somebody, blame this group. It's an incredibly powerful message when you're already hurting, because it gives you a scapegoat. It gives you a focus. These souls, when they come in, force the collective souls around them, the collective consciousness, to come to terms with what's happening, to go inside themselves, ask themselves, do I want to feel this way? Do I want to treat people that way? And then at the end of it, on a 3D level, can I live with what was done because of this energy, because of my unwillingness to see the cruelty, because it didn't affect me? So when the collective refuses to see or address the shadow, when it seems like it gets stuck in this evolutionary process or trends towards negativity and dehumanization and fear, these souls come in to provoke change. There's a lot to unpack with that. And I want to be very clear, this is not vilifying those souls. What they do when they're incarnated is incredibly cruel. On the 3D level, they're having a human experience. They are usually seeking power and control, and they're usually incredibly insecure. But as a soul level, if their soul chooses that experience, which I believe souls choose their experience, choose what they're going to be able to come into the world and do. And their choice is to come down seeking power, control, and fear, knowing on a soul level that it will provoke an awakening. It'll provoke change. It will be the catalyst for collective unity, compassion, and responsibility. Think about how that changes how we think about those souls. You can't just look at them as that man. If you think about the soul power, the soul intent behind something like that, could that change the way that we judge each other? And could it also provoke awakening without bringing in a catalyst soul? Because they don't seem to come in as singletons either. They seem to come in as groups. There's a recurring cycle of fear in human history where we turn on each other, where we dehumanize a group, and we use somebody to vilify. Often the message for the group of souls around the catalyst is us first. It's us versus them. We are right. Everybody else is wrong. We have pride in ourselves. The reason that we're unhappy is because of this group over here. It's a really clear pattern when you look at it, in order to control people, to keep them living small so that whoever's in charge can do whatever they want to. The humans that are living in that fear know on a conscious or unconscious level that by dehumanizing this group and by hurting this group, that atrocities are happening. They know people are being hurt. They know families are being separated. They know people are being tortured. They know people are being killed. But because they don't see them as human, they're keeping their eyes closed. They're pretending it's not happening because it's not happening to them. And part of that catalyst is for that situation to get so elevated, to get so bad, to get so dark, that they cannot pretend it's not happening. You can't shy away from an atrocity. You can't. It has to touch you. And a lot of humanity would rather go through life pretending it doesn't affect them. Catalyst souls make the situation affect everyone. which is what creates the desire for change. It is an incredibly profound message, and just the choice that we make as humans to come into these incarnations, and we often think of them as we come in to do the best that we can. But what if there are souls that come in to move collective consciousness forward by being a dick, by being a really negative soul themselves? It really throws the reincarnation idea on its head. And I'll tell you, the reason that this has become so important of a message to me is because I've seen in history when humans start to go into that cycle where they start living in fear, when they start dehumanizing each other, and then I see the catalyst souls come in as a group. And energy feeds energy. As that negative energy accumulates among the collective, this catalyst souls come in to elevate it, to make it worse, so that nobody can hide from it anymore. It's going to affect you, because fear generates more fear. Hatred generates more hatred. And these catalyst souls ensure that it will affect you, to give you a chance to wake up, to give you a chance to decide how your soul, how your human is going to respond to that energy. Are you going to go down the rabbit hole with them and add your hate, add your fear? Or are you going to stand against it, add your love, add your faith, add your acceptance, add your compassion, add your unity? It's a subject I'm really passionate about, and also am fearful to share with the world, because I know how much trauma we hold. We hold trauma from these events. We hold trauma from these catalyst souls. So to even discuss them is going to feel very triggering for people, which I get, I totally get. But I ask you, if this resonates with you at all, if you are looking for higher spiritual purpose behind fear and hatred, this is a really important message that I've gotten from Spirit many times, and I feel called to share. So the biggest example of this, I told you when I went into meditation, looking at Trump and why Trump was here at this time, I saw very clear comparisons to World War II. Now, I am not saying Trump is Hitler. Let's be very clear. I'm not here to break down Trump's existence and him as a man. You can love him or you hate him. It's none of my business. As a catalyst soul, there are comparisons to the souls that came down in World War II. We look at World War II like one of the greatest atrocities in the world, and it 100% was. But the world had been trending into a really dark place for a while. The Jewish community had always been persecuted. This wasn't something that just happened when Hitler came around. The world had continuously been cruel to them throughout their history, all the way back to being enslaved by the Romans. If you were Jewish, you were enslaved. That was just kind of like 1 = 1. The trending of shadow at that time, and if you watch the last episode, we talked about the end of World War II was also Gaia's awakening, Earth's awakening, and the movement of her energy center to South America. That event, that trending into shadow, was intentional in many different ways. But what it brought with it was also catalyst souls that came down to provoke change. And Adolf Hitler was absolutely one of them. If you look at his story coming in, it never should have happened. He brought in the idea of genocide, of German first ideology. He vilified the Jewish community and said, if they were gone, we would be happier. if they were dead because they're animals, then the German people would be safer. And he fed that fear in order to build control and power. But he wasn't the only one. At that time, there was also Mussolini in Italy, who was building a very similar base. He wanted fear and power. He did that by joining into the same ideology as Hitler. Many leaders in Europe went along with that message: Jews bad, Christians good. And you have to wonder why they would bend over and allow that to happen. Sorry, that's not a great expression for a spiritual podcast. Very apt. They turned on the Jewish people to the point where they shipped them out by the millions to go to death camps that were in the middle of cities, that were in the middle of rural areas. And the people that lived there claimed they didn't know it was happening. The world just let it happen. They let those people get shipped into trains. And even the people that get shipped into the trains walked onto those trains. The shadow was so strong in that area, and the people were so fearful and beaten down that they walked into that experience. They walked to their deaths. The Jewish people walked to their deaths. Those who allowed it to happen, just everybody put their heads down and moved forward into that event. It shows how strong the shadow was at that time. And these souls, these catalyst souls, the leaders in Europe at the time, came down to take that up a notch, to make it so that both sides, all sides, could not pretend like it wasn't happening. Japan was doing something very similar. The Japanese prime minister, whose name I'm not going to try and butcher, was doing something very similar out in China, in the Philippines. He was doing experiments on people. He was killing them in the millions. And there was so much fear and there was so much shadow, and they had dehumanized these other groups to the extent where the Japanese people pretended that it wasn't happening. They pretended that they were not involved. It did not affect them. We created as souls, as energy, we created this moment in time where humanity had to look at itself. It had to look at what it had done. It had to look at the events that they had allowed, perpetrated. And it had to say, is this how we want to be? Is this acceptable? Can we live with this? The catalyst moments in that were the greatest atrocities. They took the world to a place where none of us could live with the outcome. Everyone was affected by the outcome. We're all forced to see ourselves, our countries, our leaders, our treatment of each other in a very clear mirror. We were not able to pretend that atrocities and cruelty was okay. And the events of World War II triggered a time where the world said they weren't going to allow that anymore. It did change in many ways the optic on Judaism, on the Jewish culture, compared to what it had been before. The world realized that they had dehumanized this group. And it made people question if that was okay. And some people say, absolutely, that was okay. That there are some souls that didn't wake up from that, but there are other souls that had to come to terms in a way that would affect their karma forever. It would push them to evolve as souls, to jump forward as souls in a way that they weren't on the path to do, because they were going down into shadow. And the shadow got so dark that they leaped back. And that leap back allowed their souls to move in a different direction. this event has happened so many times. You look at colonization, going into other countries and taking and killing and raping and enslaving people. This was seen as okay. This was something that made countries rich and powerful and kept people in fear. And the world said it was okay. No one stood up to stop it on a global level, to say this cannot happen. And it's something that has led to some catalyst moments, certainly the Civil War in the US, a lot of the UK colonies fighting back over the ages, and still is something that we talk about and are dealing with today. A lot of extremist groups were born out of that belief that we could take, that we could control, that we could enslave. These are groups that fought back and still have hatred towards Western powers because of what was done to them. This idea of energy feeding energy, we continue to repeat this lesson of going into the shadow until we stop. We can stop ourselves from going into that shadow. We can stop the collective energy. Actually, I'm being told that that's not true. We can support the collective energy that is going into the shadow and give them a light, a way to come out of it. So if you take that example of what was going on in the world before World War II that led to those catalyst souls coming in, Stalin, Mussolini, Hitler, the Prime Minister of Japan, even the leaders of the US, everybody was being asked to look directly at an atrocity and determine how their energy was going to respond to it, how their soul was going to respond to it. That is what has been trending recently. Now, the atrocities of the world that are happening are again being ignored. We are again allowing groups to be dehumanized. This is not like it's something that stopped and we learned our lesson and now we're going back into it. This is something that's always been happening, but we're getting to the point where catalyst souls have come in again. There are catalyst souls in positions of power around the world. And they are going to elevate the situation. They're going to provoke more fear and more dehumanization until souls decide they're not going to feel that way, until it comes to a head. And we're asked to look at what has been done, if not with our participation, then with our permission, because we are not showing compassion. We are not showing unity. We are not showing oneness, heart. So the collective energy right now is trending to shadow. It's trending to fear. We are being asked the same way that they were asked back in World War II, before that started, before that came to a head. We are being asked what we are willing to believe. Do we believe we are separate? Do we believe that we are better than another group? Do we believe that others have control over us? That others can hurt another group? Is it okay to stand back and allow atrocities if they just close their eyes? So we are being asked, we are being given the opportunity, the invitation, a soul invitation to decide how we want to deal with the shadow, with the catalysts in the shadow. We're making the shadow feel darker and more powerful than ever before. Each time this happens, each time these catalyst souls come in, Earth is at a dark point. It's in a dark moment of the soul, a night of the soul. But what comes after the night? We can bring light to these situations by choosing not to live in fear, not to feed the energy of hate, not to feed the energy of judgment and dehumanization. We can choose acts of compassion. We can push back the energy of negativity and face things with our heart, face things with our light. We don't have to get sucked into that shadow, but even better, we can stand our ground. We can post our flag, our light pole in this energy, and let the other energy mirror ours. Light is a force. It does not fight the darkness, but it reveals another path. It makes it less dark. So if you think of this time and what's going on in the world right now as the same type of energy that was going on prior to the catalyst souls that came in at World War II, then what is our responsibility? What is our job? Well, as light workers, our job is to be aware of the manipulation, to be aware of the fear, to be aware of how we are feeding the energy, of how we are reacting to the energy, how we react to hate and violence and dehumanizing will directly affect the energy of the whole world. And then other people add their light to it, and exponentially it moves across the globe. And now the movement, the catalyst, doesn't have to come to that catastrophic end. It doesn't have to boil over. It doesn't have to explode. This is an energetic catalyst moment. The atrocities are happening. We are dehumanizing each other. And we are pretending like it's not happening. We are fearful. We are separate. We are alone. Now that we are aware of that, that has been what's happening, then we can change it. We make a choice, refusing to participate in that narrative, refusing to give our energy, aligning to Gaia, aligning to each other through light, not allowing fear to create an emotional trigger in our bodies, not allowing the news to dictate whether we love or hate somebody, not allowing social media to dictate whether we are happy or angry or hateful. We get to choose. We can accept that this is happening, that there are souls down here that are here to provoke change. They're giving souls the opportunity to look at themselves in the mirror and they're forcing the world to take their blinders off. We can help. We can help by not falling into the narrative and by adding light and love into this world, into social media, into our families, into our friends. You just envision light going out into your city, into the world, and it makes a difference. Be careful not to judge the catalyst souls, or not to judge people that are falling into hatred or fear. Judgment is a form of fear. It's not coming from a place of love. Judgment comes from fear. Catalyst souls show us the cost of forgetting our oneness, but they also offer us the opportunity to remember what we are, who we truly are. This reframe is one that I have to tell my father at least once a month whenever he calls to complain about something that Trump is doing. He is a catalyst soul. He might have his 3D intentions: power, control, influence, whatever it is. But what is it provoking? What change could it be offering the world the opportunity to take? What mirror is it holding up to the world? What image is it showing us and giving us the opportunity to evolve? So when I tell my father this too has a reason, I mean it quite literally. There is a higher purpose behind these types of souls coming in. We can refuse to hate. We can only show love. We can cut through that energy of fear. We are powerful enough to do that. So I invite you to join the front line. I invite you to share your love and your light, share your reflections, share moments when you felt that darkness, felt that catalyst energy, and how you brought light to it. This is a movement. We have the opportunity here to break the dialogue, to break into the shadow, to bring light to the darkness. So share your light. I would love to see how that affects everything, because energy attracts energy. Thank you so much for participating in this. I hope it's received with heart. I know, again, this is a very triggering subject. To see any light in moments of darkness like that can be really hard for people to do. People aren't willing to do that. But these are messages that I've gotten from Spirit for a long time. And given where we are in the world and the messages of hate and fear that we're getting, it's important for us to see not just that this is happening, but that we can have a role in it. Please like, subscribe, rate the podcast if you're listening to it. Join me on any of the social media platforms to communicate, to join the community. And next Thursday, we'll have another episode on planetary awakening. Not sure what it's going to be yet. I'm going to wait to see what Spirit has to share. So until then, love and light. Thank you guys so much.